Hi, welcome to the Improved Garage YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. So today I'm going to be doing a little bit different video than I normally do. I'm going to be talking about my experience with Swisstrax. So these are Swisstrax tiles. They are a plastic tile or a rubberized plastic tile that is often used in gyms, in garages, in a variety of places. The exact product that I have is a Swisstrax Ribtrax Smooth Pro. It's a 16 inch by 16 inch tile. They're 3/4 of an inch thick. This is what a tile looks like. I would say of all of the products that I've purchased for the garage, I get more questions about the Swisstrax than I do about anything else that I've done so far. So I kind of wanted to do a little video, talk through my experience with Swisstrax. I'm not trying to turn this into a debate with epoxy or anything like that, but I just want to talk about my experience with Swisstrax and try to answer some of the questions that people have asked me in the past, and just talk about the floor. I've had it for a year at this point. So 1 year with Swisstrax. What's that like? Would I do it again? The first thing that I often hear is, I like epoxy better because of whatever. And that's awesome. I attempted to do epoxy. This floor actually has epoxy below the Swisstrax. It failed in this room, and I decided to not do it again. I've lived in 2 different houses with 3 different epoxy floors that were done by different vendors through different products, and all of them have failed at some point or another. That's not to say that every epoxy floor will fail. Just the reality in my experience is that you don't know if the floor is going to fail when you're buying it. You don't know if the floor is going to fail until it fails. So I just decided not to, not to do epoxy again. Can you use a jack on them? Yes, you absolutely can use a floor jack. You can use a jack stand. You can use a lift on them. So I personally have that Harbor Freight jack right there. It's the Daytona. It's the unit that's $250, and it's the metallic orange color. Works perfectly fine on the tiles. I will say that if you don't put anything underneath the jack, it will often stretch the tiles, especially if you're lifting up like a whole entire side of a car, or if you're lifting something that's heavier. So the easiest way to combat that is just put something small underneath it. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, just to distribute the weight. A 1/4 inch piece of wood works very well for that. I used to have a 2x2, 2 foot by 2 foot piece of wood that I used to just stick under the jacks. Alternatively, you can use something like this. Eventually, after time, I bought this from Lowe's. This is a 24 inch by 30 inch sheet of 26 gauge. It's like steel, but it's super thin, works very well, and I can put this under the jack and I can jack up and down all day. The jack rolls no problem. It doesn't ruin or mark up or stretch any of the tiles. And to be very clear, without this, it doesn't ruin the tiles, but it leaves like a mark in them. There's like a white, it looks like a stretch mark, kind of. The tiles bounce back, but they leave a mark, a visual indicator that there was something there. This type of floor jack works very well, jack stand. This can be used on the floor without anything underneath it, will not mark the floor. The ones with the feet on them, like the 4 feet, the little metal ones, those will mark the floor. They'll dig into the floor when you're using them. My bend pack quick jacks that I have hanging over there, those work very well on the floor. Do not leave any marks whatsoever, and are honestly the perfect companion to this floor. They're fantastic. They're great for any garage, but they're great for this floor because they make it so that you can use jacks without having anything underneath them. They can pick the car up. They don't leave any marks. They're very easy to move, very easy to put away. They work very, very well. So it's another recommendation. If you're spending $4 grand on a floor, maybe you want to spend $1,500 on a set of quick jacks because they're awesome. They're one of the best purchases I've ever made. What happens when you break a tile? If you ruin a tile, what happens? So I just mentioned that, I've ruined some before with jacks. I actually melted a tile with a heat gun. I was removing decals from a vehicle that I bought from a company. It had a big logo on the back of it, and I was removing that with my heat gun, and I set my heat gun down and I actually melted one of the tiles. So what do you do when you ruin a tile? Well, let me show you. Right here, we have a tile. This is a spare tile, and underneath it is a tile. Now this tile actually has a scratch on it. Very small scratch, no big deal. But what do you do when you ruin a tile? So, first thing you do is get one of these, paint can opener. Any hardware store. These tiles have edges that are solid and edges that have holes. My floor is laid out like this because I started in that corner. So what we do is we take this tile, we lift it up like this, and pull it up. And we unsnap it. We pull that tile out. We put this tile in. That is it. So that tile has now been replaced. Seconds to do it. And yeah, it's, you know, $5 or $6 a tile. So, you know, I'll be honest with you. I did the entire floor, and over the last year, I've replaced maybe a dozen tiles because I've marked one up, or I've melted one, or I've whatever. So what I do is I'll buy like a 6-pack of tiles, have them sitting on the shelf. If I ruin a tile, I'll replace it. And then the ruined tiles, I have a storage room over there. I've been putting them in there. They're great for your shed. They're great for shelving, for inside like a cabinet, or if you have like open wire shelving or anything like that, you can put them on those. Or you can just not care. I mean, you mark them up, you mark them up. But it's very easy to just replace a tile if you do ruin one, and the tiles are $6. If you ruin a section of an epoxy floor, you're redoing a large section of the floor, and it's really hard to just redo one section. So that is one thing that I really like about the Swisstrax. I often hear comments about these are only for people who don't work in their garage. These are for people that just park in their garage or just clean in their garage. Well, you know, maybe I don't work in my garage, but I've done 2 engine replacements this year. I did a clutch. So the engine replacements were a 2010 Scion XB and a 1991 Mazda Miata, an NA Miata. We did a clutch in a 2006 Mazda 3, and we removed and reinstalled the transmission in the Miata and did the clutch in that at that same time. I've done oil changes, brake jobs, installed a radiator in the Miata, like all kinds of different stuff. I've run an engine hoist around here. So I mean, I don't know what more you could do in your home garage. I would say that I do more than most people when it comes to mechanical stuff in my garage, and the Swisstrax tiles have been great for me. What about when you spill something on them? I think that that's kind of the magic. So a great example for that, and I just posted a video, I'll put a link in the description, about like cleaning under Swisstrax. But I was doing the Scion XB. So I replaced an engine and an automatic transmission with a new engine in a 2010 Scion XB that I purchased that didn't run. And when I decided while I had the engine and the automatic transmission out that I would replace the transmission filter, and I would refill the transmission fluid, and that requires you remove the automatic transmission pan. So I removed the pan, and it flew off all over the ground because of the RTV silicone. It was stuck on there. When I pried it off, it just kind of flew off. And I ended up with like a half a gallon of automatic transmission fluid all over the ground. So I just wiped up the couple tiles that it hit, and I kept working. And 2 days later, when I was done with the project, I unsnapped the section of the tiles and I cleaned underneath it, and then the fluid was just gone. It was cleaned up. But while I was working on the project, I didn't really have to worry about cleaning up the mess because it was underneath the tiles. I just had to wipe off the stuff that was on top of it so I wasn't tracking it all over the garage. So how do you clean them? Me, honestly, I usually vacuum them up. So I'll run a vacuum, just a normal shop vac with a wide head on it, and I'll vacuum up any, you know, leaves, feathers, things like that that randomly blow in from the outside. I find that most of that collects in the first couple of tiles in the doorway. And then once I'm done with that, I use a mop. So I use a mop with a little bit of degreaser and water, and I just mop the floor like I'm mopping any other floor. Like I would mop my epoxy floor when I used to have that. Really no different. It works really, really well. Are they noisy to walk on? Honestly, not noisier than the concrete floor or the epoxy floor. Differently noisy, I would guess, or I would say. They're very comfortable to walk on when you're like wearing socks or you're wearing slippers or whatever. Like if you're just kind of out in the garage hanging out, I think that they're nicer to walk on than the concrete floor is. They're a little warmer than the floor. When it gets cold at night, I think that they're a little warmer. And they're a little bit warmer when you're like kneeling on them to do like polishing on a car or something like that. Do the tiles get picked up when you park on them? No, I've never had that happen. I haven't had any tiles get unsnapped, get moved, get jostled, get anything by any of my cars while parking on them or while leaving the garage. I've seen things on Facebook where people have complained about that. I cannot imagine how you would do that. Maybe you're doing burnouts in your garage, maybe you're pulling in and slamming on your brakes. I honestly don't know, but it has never happened in my garage. It just hasn't. And that includes like having the emergency brake on the car on or having the car in gear while jacking it up and like having it, you know, kind of stutters across the floor even. Like it's, I've just never had a tile come up. Does the weather affect the tiles? I honestly can't really answer that very well. I live in the central part of California. The weather here ranges from about 45 degrees on the low end to about 85 degrees on the high end. So I've got a very small range of weather temperatures. I will say that I don't have any issues with waves or anything like that from the sunlight or any tiles that are being displaced because of the sun coming in through the doorway. And that happens every afternoon and doesn't happen in the morning. So can you use heavy things on them? Yeah, I've used an engine hoist and I've rolled around an engine hanging from it. So I don't know, it's 500 pounds, give or take, engine plus transmission. It was a small 4-cylinder engine, but it had an automatic transmission on it as well. And I think the hoist weighs probably 100 pounds by itself. You know, I've had no issues with that. I will say, like I mentioned, if you've got something really heavy, you can kind of distort the tiles and you'll get like a white mark, like a stretch mark kind of, where you rolled over something. But usually that only happens with the floor jack. I don't have that happen with the engine hoist or with anything else yet. How have I ruined tiles myself? I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but so I have ruined tiles with my desk chair. It has really skinny plastic wheels on it, and just the amount of pressure that it's putting in one spot, if you get it in like one of the notches, you'll end up with a white mark, a stretch mark. Fairly easy, just swap out the wheels for something like a roller, the rollerblade style wheels. They work great and you don't really have any issues with it. I've ruined tiles with floor jacks before, with jack stands before, and I've just replaced them and used something underneath the floor jack. The flat bottom jack stands work great. I've never ruined a tile under one of those. I've never ruined a tile under my engine hoist, under my press, under my cabinets on their feet or anything like that. I've never ruined one by driving on it. I've never ruined one by walking on it. And I've never ruined one with chemicals. It's always been with a floor jack or with like I had a pallet here with an engine on it. Well, there's a bunch of spikes hanging out the back of the pallet, staples or whatever, and they scratched the crap out of a couple tiles. You know, stuff like that happens. They're plastic. So would I buy them again, knowing what I know now? Honestly, I think so. I think that if I was doing another garage down the street, I would buy them again. Now the cost has gone up pretty tremendously. Plastic is a petroleum-based product, so obviously they're more expensive now than they were when I bought them, but so is epoxy and so is labor, so reasonably they've probably inflated about as much. Honestly, I would buy them again. I do like the idea of you know, being able to replace a single tile when one gets ruined. I like the idea of being able to clean underneath them. I like the idea of them having channels for water to flow and for me to not have to worry about cleaning up a mess in the middle of a project. I like the fact that if I move out of this house, I can pack them up and take them with me. And there's an epoxy floor below it that I can sweep out, and the next people will get an epoxy floor, because a lot of people probably don't care about the garage nearly as much as I do. But yeah, I think they're great. I think I would definitely purchase them again, and I think I would definitely recommend them to somebody else. I've had a little bit of experience with race deck and Swisstrax and a couple of the like third-party, plastic tile company tiles. I think that the Swisstrax are really nice at being 3/4 of an inch thick. I think that that's a differentiator, and I also really like the locking system in the Swisstrax. They're a lot easier to connect and disconnect than the race deck is. So if you're looking to like replace a single tile or unsnap a section of them so you can clean under them, I think the Swisstrax is a superior product for that, but they are a little bit more expensive as well. But that's really about it. So, I appreciate you watching. Maybe this helps you if you're on the fence, you're thinking about it, whatever. I think they're a good product, and I would definitely do it again. So, thanks and have a great day.